A few weeks ago, I was reading On the Shores of Silver Lake to my daughter. And this book is part of the Little House on the Prairie series, and it takes place when Laura Ingalls Wilder's family moves from Walnut Grove, Minnesota to DeSmet, South Dakota. In the first 3 books of the series, their bulldog Jack has been a constant companion to Laura. And at the beginning of this 4th book, everyone is sad. The family's been sick, their oldest daughter went blind, and their farm has been a bust. An unexpected visitor comes and offers them a chance for a new start, and they take it. Well, everyone except Jack the bulldog. Jack dies in his sleep right before they're set to leave. And when I got to the few pages describing Jack's death, I couldn't read it. I tried multiple times, and I just couldn't. And my daughter was even like, "Mom, why aren't you reading?" I just couldn't do it. I had to call my husband into the room to read it. And the thing is, I know what happens. I know that pets die. I've had many pets who have died in my life. I also know that this story was put in for dramatic effect. Jack the bulldog had actually stayed in Kansas during the whole Little House on the Prairie book, when Laura's family moved from Kansas back to Wisconsin. So this whole story was made up. I know that. But I still cried to a point where I couldn't read the pages out loud. I knew the end of the story, but I still cried during the sad part. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to console them about their brother. When Martha heard Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came and saw Jesus, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he's been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe you sent me." When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." In our gospel reading for today, we hear the story of Lazarus dying and Jesus going to his tomb, being chastised by a mourning Mary and Martha, and then weeping at Lazarus' tomb. Among the murmurs at the tomb of the other mourners were words of those saying, "Jesus loved Lazarus." Well, Jesus should have been able to keep Lazarus from dying. He ordered them to roll away the stone, and he called for Lazarus to come out, and Lazarus rose from his grave, walking out to the crowd. Now, there are many different opinions as to why Jesus wept, as well as questions. Well, why did Jesus cry when Jesus is God and he knew that he was going to raise Lazarus? Why didn't Jesus heal Lazarus before he died? Did Jesus cry because he was frustrated with people for not having faith? Did Jesus cry because he was weak? Did Jesus cry because he was sad? Well, for one thing, it's not weak to cry. Jesus wept because God weeps with us when tragedy strikes. God weeps with us when our loved ones die, when we are stricken with illness, when we are grieved beyond words, when we are hurt, when we feel hopeless. Just because you know the end of the story doesn't mean you can't cry during the sad parts. And that's exactly what Jesus did. He cried at the sad part. He cried because his friend had died, and those around him were hurting at this loss. There's so much beauty in this text. Jesus shows that it's okay to be vulnerable and to show emotions. And this went against centuries of teaching. The philosopher Plato lived hundreds of years before Jesus was born. Plato died around 348 BC. And he was a student of Socrates and the teacher of Aristotle. These three form a solid foundation of philosophical thinking that's still used today. Plato believed that emotions were irrational reactions of the lower psychosomatic levels of the soul. And this belief morphed into what is essentially mind good, emotions bad. Now, whether or not you believe that's true, the effects of this teaching can be seen all around us today. When I'm reading books to my children, many times older books, I will often omit lines that say things like, "Only babies cry," or "Being angry or mad or sad is wrong or it's a sin," because I don't want them growing up thinking that. And at the same time, even though I know and understand the importance of showing emotions, I have a hard time showing emotions in public or around anyone but my family, because I don't want to be seen as overly emotional and only thinking with my feelings. And my guess is that many of us struggle with that. But the thing is, emotions and feelings aren't the enemy. They help make life full and rich. Imagine going through life not feeling anything, not experiencing the highs and lows, the hills and valleys, the mountains and lakes and trees and streams, just flat. Like driving through North Dakota or South Dakota flat. Nothing on the horizon, just beige color all around you. That's a life of no emotion. And that's not the life that God gave us. God gave us color, variety, seasons, different landscapes, so we can experience the full breadth of creation and of life. You know, even those flat places in North Dakota and South Dakota, they're still teeming with life if you look close enough. And they're still teeming with beauty. But we have to look close enough. God gave us emotions that open us up to feel all the feels of life, the sad, the devastating, but also the exciting, the mundane, and everything in between. There's a quote that I think I've used it before, but I'm going to share it again because it so perfectly sums up all of this. It's by author L.R. Nost, the founder and director of the children's rights advocacy and family consulting group, Little Hearts Gentle Parenting Resources. She says, life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and the awful, it's ordinary and mundane and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. You know the real beauty of it all? God walks with us through all of that, through the ordinary, through the mundane, through the awful, through the amazing. And God not just walks with us, but God experiences it with us. And that's why Jesus weeping is so powerful. Because our God became like us, experiencing the high highs and the low lows, understanding innately what it is to be human. If Jesus, the Son of God, the Word of God made flesh, can weep when his friend died, even though he knew that he'd be raising him from the dead, even though this was not the end for Lazarus, then what makes us think we're better than that? What makes us think that our emotions are not worth showing? Jesus came not just to save us, but to also be an example to us of how to live, how to truly live. Allowing ourselves to feel, even when we're afraid that the feelings are so strong we might not ever come out of them, it helps us to be the people God created us to be. If we don't allow ourselves to experience those emotions, then we become numb to the beauty of the world, or they end up coming out in super unhealthy ways that hurt us or hurt others around us. Now this summer, as you work to revive your faith, take a look at reviving your emotions, the emotions that you might be hiding, and allow yourself to process through them. If you're ever afraid to cry because you think you won't ever be able to stop, let yourself cry. It's reviving, it's cleansing, it's soul healing. And the thing is, you won't cry forever. And know also, if you're uncomfortable showing emotions, it is okay to cry at the sad parts, even if you know the ending to the story. That's what Jesus did. That's the beauty of our world, and that is the beauty of God. Amen. A couple of reflection questions for you to take and go deeper into the message this week. The first, are you a person who cries at the sad parts? And if you are, that's totally cool. And if you're not, that's cool too. But how do you express your feelings of sadness? And the second, does it bring you comfort to know that Jesus cried when his friends died, even though he knew the end of the story? How?